Hello and welcome to Literally Me, the Ryan Gosling Rewatch podcast. I am your host, Dean's Beans, and for the third week in a row, I am joined by my good friend and co-host, Harlan. Hello.
Hello there, Dean. How are you this wonderful day?
Evening. You can say it's evening for both of us, I would say.
It, I mean, it's 4 for me.
Yeah, and it's 10 for me. So it's more night for me and late afternoon for you. So let's meet in the middle with evening. I'm doing wonderfully. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Yep. So if you didn't know, this is the podcast where we are rewatching every single Ryan Gosling film, and we are on episode 3, and we're talking about his third film called The Believer.
Dean, do you want to give a quick little brief as to what this movie's about?
Yeah, I mean, I think this movie is pretty easy to sum up. It's basically Ryan Gosling stars as a neo-Nazi who is also Jewish, and it's kind of this character struggling with that self-loathing and what to do.
And me and Dean had a quick little discussion before this podcast, and there's a lot of violence and anti-Semitism, and this is not a fun film. And with the things going on in the world, and more specifically Gaza and the whole Palestinian conflict, this conversation might spark up a desire to do something about that. So if it does so, there will be some links to donation websites in the description down below if you feel so inclined whilst watching this podcast.
Yes, thank you.
Because this is I looking at Ryan Gosling's filmography, this I would say is easily the heaviest movie he's done.
From my looks at it, it does look like that. And really, if you want, I mean, you might disagree. I have no idea what Harlan thinks of this film. We haven't discussed it.
Mm-mm.
Basically, all I think, if I just say Ryan Gosling plays a Jewish neo-Nazi, if you think that sounds like an interesting and challenging film, I think you'll like it. And if you think that doesn't sound fun, then you won't like it. I think literally off that one phrase, I think you can tell whether someone would enjoy this if this is a film for them or not.
Yeah. It definitely um oh, I don't know how I was gonna phrase it. It's different. It is nothing like I've seen. No, I have not seen Ryan Gosling act like this before.
No, it's
At all.
I found it an interesting film. But before we get to the film itself, let's just go through a little bit of background for it. So
Okay.
this film was released in 2001 and is the last Ryan Gosling film that was released before Harlan was born. Fun
Wow.
fact for all our listeners. But like really surprisingly to me, he was 20 years old.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. When this film was released, he was 20 years old, which is crazy when you watch the film to think that guy's younger than us. It was directed by Henry Bean. It made 1.3 million in the box office, which of course is nothing. And it's got an
Especially on a budget of 1.5.
yes, yeah, and it's got a budget of it's got 82% on Rotten Tomatoes from the audience and from the critics. Interestingly,
Wow.
there are only
Tied.
two films in Ryan Gosling's filmography that the critics and audience agree on. The
Hmm.
other one is Blade Runner 2049.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. So, Harlem, before we get to the film itself, this film was released in 2001. And like we'd like to do every week, what do you think your favorite 2001 film is? If you haven't looked, I think I can answer.
Yeah, you answer yours first. I'll give you my
So
runner.
I was torn between two, but I think I know which one my favorite is. My second place was Spirited Away. Phenomenal film. But I
Oh,
think,
you know I like that movie.
yeah. But I personally, for me, I think my favorite has to be Fellowship of the Ring. First Lord of the Rings film.
Shrek is a pretty close
Shrek
runner
is
up.
great as well. Shrek is
Donnie Darko is fantastic.
not seen it.
You haven't seen Donnie Dark? Actually, I hadn't for a while either. But I have to go Spirited Away. That's one of my favorite
Yeah.
movies of all time.
Yeah, so I'm happy you go Spirited Away. I go
Yeah.
Fellowship of the Ring. Then my two favorite films from that year have been chosen. Did this film actually have a budget of 150?
No, 1.5.
Sorry, one. That's what I meant to say. 1.5. That's interesting.
What, did you suspect it to be less?
No, I just think, yeah, I don't know. I think it's interest. I think it makes it more interesting that it made so little money.
It didn't look great.
No,
That's what, because
but also like 1.5 million is really nothing in like movie making terms.
that's true. But when my roommate came in during like the climax of this movie, I,
Mhm.
I I I did fall asleep during this movie. I did not fall asleep. I was noticing myself kind of like fading
Yeah,
in and out, and then I
I did.
paused
I
it.
did that last week for Remember the Titans.
So I paused it, took a 2 hour nap, and I took a 2 hour nap at like 10 p.m. Like I was going to bed,
Wait, sorry, did
but
you wake up at 10 p.m. or did you go have your
I
tea
went to sleep at 10 p.m.
and then you woke up at midnight and finished it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I stayed up for like another hour, and then I went actually back to bed, which I think is impressive. I think it is impressive that I took a 2 hour nap, woke up for 30 minutes. It was like, you know what? It's time to go take another nap. And I did so. But
That's good stuff. Yeah, I think we've already lost the train of thought here. Should
okay,
we just give our general thoughts?
general thoughts about the film.
Yeah,
I thought it was fine.
yeah.
I wasn't really impressed by the story.
Hmm.
Have you ever seen American History X?
No.
If you like this movie, you'll love that movie because it deals with the same thing of like neo Nazis,
Yeah, yeah,
anti-Sem, but it handles the arc of like a troubled kid much better. I think everything this movie does, American History X does better, and I don't want to say more respectfully because I think that this movie was written by and directed by Henry Bean, who is a Jewish artist, but
yeah.
it
I don't think this film did anything
no.
untastefully, but like it didn't pull its punches either. Like it was quite, you know. I think I enjoyed this film more than you did. I think I agree the plot's a bit like us, but this film doesn't really have a plot. So I kind of, you know, like I don't know how to explain it, but it's kind of just, you know, and I found it interesting and I found it quite fascinating. And I enjoyed Ryan Gosling's performance in it. Like
Ryan
I
Gosling, he delivered a very good performance for this really being his first feature film
yeah,
as a lead.
it's an interesting film. I will leave it at that. That was kind of my if like I had to describe this film one day, I'd probably say it was interesting.
I do think like maybe I missed it, and maybe it was because I was getting a little sleepy.
Yeah,
But so the big premise behind this movie is that this main character,
yeah,
full blown Nazi anti-Semite,
yeah,
but he is Jewish, and
mhm,
he's dealing with these two conflicting ideologies.
yeah,
But from what I can tell, the movie never fully explained why he turned. You could tell he had his moments
yeah,
of like doubts and him finding what are the words? Conflicting or hypocritical points of view in
mhm.
what he was reading about, but there wasn't a catalyst for him
Yeah.
changing.
Yeah, I get that as a
Which I don't think necessarily was. I'm not like necessarily like the movie needed that to work. I don't think it did, but it's. I do think it would have helped get attached, or not.
yeah,
Because you want the Ryan Gosling character to eventually turn back and be a good guy,
yeah.
which he kind of does. But
Uh, Um, so should we talk about the performance of the Goz?
yeah, I do. I think that what I found was jarring about his performance, not bad, but just jarring, is how much he spoke.
Yeah,
Because Ryan Gosling, his parts, he's not a very wordy actor.
that's true.
A lot of his big films, he has very little lines.
And it's like when he does speak, it is something like Barbie or The Fall Guy or The Nice Guys, where he's a bit of a doofus. And I
Yeah.
think he speaks very like um eloquently and like sounds quite intelligent throughout this film.
Yes. And which I did like that part of the film
Yeah,
and how they constantly addressed it
yeah.
and almost in a way of like you're too smart to be thinking this way. It
Yeah,
was
it's interesting because like I'm not saying it's like, oh, it's challenging your preconceived notions of a racist, but it makes you like reassess some of these things. Because when I am, well, if you like imagine a racist person, I just imagine a big idiot. And obviously, Ryan Gosling in this film is a big idiot, but like he has like his own ideas and his own ideologies and like these obviously twisted trains of thought that sound intelligent to go behind what he's saying. And I'm like, I guess this is how a lot of these people do think. And I thought that part of it was quite interesting.
yeah, I agree. Should we
Yeah,
get to the co-stars? The co-stars of this film.
sure. I think that's yeah. I do think Ryan Gosling is really good in this. I think it's like it
Yeah.
is it is one of his more quiet performances, if you know what I mean.
I do think I don't think this is one of his best films, but it's definitely one of his best performances.
Yeah, like he doesn't have any what I mean by quiet performances. Like he doesn't have any big shouty moments, but
Right.
a lot of it is understated, which works. Co-stars, like this is a very Goz heavy film. Like not many people have the stuff
Mm-hmm.
stat to like shine on their own. Did anyone stand out to you?
No, no coast. I do think when the movie's not focused on Ryan Gosling, it does kind of slow down.
Yeah, I think
Um,
I think the stuff with his love interest is interesting.
I think the stuff with his love interest, I don't think worked for me at least worked as well as they wanted it to.
I do agree that it was a bit rushed and out of nowhere.
But it was an I'll just talk about kind of what happened.
Yeah, go on.
So Ryan Gosling's character starts bringing all of this um Jewish scripture home,
Yeah,
and his love interest, who's kind of part of this underground hate group,
yeah,
starts questioning him, but not accusatorily, but being like, "What is this? Can you
yeah,
help me understand it?"
yeah. So
And then she ends up kind
it's
of
Torah that
converting.
he teaches her how to read Hebrew so she can read it. And then she ends up being like, oh, we need to go and follow these Jewish practices.
And it's interesting, but really, it didn't really work for me
If
personally.
that was the film, I think it would be really interesting because
Yes.
it's kind of this thing of like you can't tell if she's wanting to do these things because she's starting to believe in this religion or if she actually is just like, oh, I hate Jews and I want to figure out how they work.
Yeah. And I do think that whole premise of Ryan Gosling being connected to another hate group that wasn't necessarily like they're not necessarily a Nazi group, but they kind of are.
Yeah, they're like a pro fascism group, but
Yeah. I feel like that could have been I feel like that was not used as strategically as it could have.
no, I do agree. Um, yeah, so his girlfriend is played by Summer Phoenix, who is the sister to Joaquin. Did you know
Oh,
that?
really?
Yeah,
I did not know that.
Joaquin Phoenix's sister. And then the only other actor I knew before is Billy Zane, who's
Yeah.
kind of the leader of the like pro fascism group.
Yes.
I didn't know anyone else in this film. I don't know about you.
No, there was one Nazi that was in this movie, and that I vaguely recognized, and he was like, I was watching X-Men Origins Wolverine today,
Yeah.
kind of an opposite. He
You
was, but he was
really
also
needed
in
a
that
palate
movie as a
cleanser.
doctor.
You,
What'd you say?
you really needed a palate cleanser. So you went, I know.
Yeah, yeah, but like opposite.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, those
Who
are
do X-Men
the
Origins?
and also like another love interest is was in Haunting of Hill House,
Oh yeah.
but I forget
Yes.
her
Yeah,
name.
yeah. Who's in X-Men Origins?
It was one of the Nazis who has like kind of a skeletal face structure.
Or is he just a random guy? And
I mean, he's like part of his posse.
okay, I don't remember X-Men Origins. I think I will be watching it
No,
soon.
you it's a what I'm saying he's in is that
Oh,
um he's it's not Garrett Dillahunt, whose most popular things are he's in No Country for Old Men, where the cross like he's like I wouldn't expect you to know what who he is.
yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. Um, I do think there's like really, yeah, there's interesting scenes in this film, and I just think they struggle to string them together.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's this whole thing we mentioned it where they like break into a synagogue, they plant bombs there, and then they start like drawing swastikas on the wall and like messing the place up, and then one of them gets out the Torah, um, and Ryan Gosling is like, "Oh no, you can't touch it. You can't do this. You can't do this." And then they break it a little bit, and he takes it home and he fixes it. And I thought stuff like that I did find like really just interesting to watch because it was watching this guy go and literally plant bombs in a synagogue to blow up however many people, and then be like, "Oh no, but we need to treat this religious text with respect." And it's like he had respect for the like the religious traditions, but not for the Jewish people.
Yeah, see, that's what I find like I would have really found interesting just like a little bit more from his backstory. Just like
Yeah.
this it could have been just like a small little thing said by one of his old classmates.
Yeah, I think it is kind of this thing that I like. You see a lot of clips of him having these arguments with his like Jewish teacher as a child,
Hmm.
and maybe you know I it would make sense if I had a more comprehensive knowledge of the Jewish faith,
Right.
but
But
like
which
yeah,
neither of us do.
no.
I assume me much less than like I really like I'm really dumb. Like I really don't know much. Like I'm
I
not
don't
a
know a lot. Like I know, yeah, I'm not confident enough to, you know, um, yeah, like I think it is interesting that sort of thing. I think really, like this film isn't about like politics or Judaism or fascism. Really, it's kind of about like these feelings of self-hate because like I would like my argument and my like interpretation of this film is the reason that this guy became a Nazi and became such a massive anti-Semite is just because he really does not like himself. And I think there are
mm,
moments which really give that away. And I think that it's like they were like, oh, how can we make this? Is this we haven't mentioned it? This film's based off a true story,
I
very,
didn't know this.
very vaguely. So like in this movie, like he's plotting to kill like Jewish people high up in banks and like we said, plant bombs in synagogues. And like I'm that stuff isn't true. But he was like a neo-Nazi and he was going to all these meetings. And then a New York Times article was released saying that he was Jewish. So
Mm,
then he killed himself from that. And
right.
that's
Okay.
the broad strokes of kind of what happens in this film.
Um, how did you feel about the ending?
Just to explain the ending first. So he plants a bomb in a different synagogue, and then that night, there's a massive news story about this neo-Nazi who's secretly a Jew, and then he goes to the synagogue and his girlfriend's there, like practicing the faith, and he's trying to tell her to leave because he's like, there's a bomb that's going to go off, and she doesn't leave. So then he tells everyone there's a bomb there, and he stays there, and then gets blown up.
I mean, how did you did that work for you?
Um, I think it was a little rushed,
Yeah.
but I think the idea of it, I don't know, because like you said earlier on, you were like, he kind of becomes a good guy in the end. I think it's more of this thing. Like, I don't think he like truly believes any of this stuff he's going around saying. And in the end of the film, when he gets outed, he's more like, oh, now I need to end my life because I can't, keep. I'm now like ostracized from both of these worlds.
Yeah, I mean, even when I said good guy, I didn't necessarily
I
mean
yeah,
like
I'm not saying you were
100%,
like,
but like he
yeah,
did
he redeemed
save
himself a
people.
little, yeah.
Um, but yeah, like you said, it was a little rushed. We didn't get, uh, I think, the payoff the movie was necessarily looking for. I thought the how it really ends, which is him stuck in this sort of purgatory
Mm-hmm.
with his old teacher,
Yeah,
was interesting. And a lot of this movie, because we did briefly mention the budget, I think a lot of it was dictated by the film's budget.
yeah, like that. I did read that like they could only film in a lot of places for very quickly because they didn't have permission to film in these places.
Right. And like even like during when the bomb goes off in the synagogue, they could have chosen like it's just like they it kind of like burns.
Yeah,
If it doesn't, it's not an explosion. It like,
it kind of like cuts away. Yeah,
and I think like I don't. There are just some things in the movie where I'm like, that's a budget thing, but
yeah.
I don't know.
There were now I think about it, there were weird things in this film that I'd completely forgotten about. And now I'm like, why is that included? Like, there's a scene where this guy shows up and he's like, "Hey, do you want to go kill a Jew?" And he's like, "Yeah, okay." And they drive, and he gets a sniper rifle, and he tries and shoots this Jewish guy, and then he misses, and then the guy he's with figures out he's a Jew, and then does that guy get shot? And then he
He gets
runs.
shot in the leg, but nothing ever happens after that.
Yeah,
I think
that's
it's
what I
assumed
mean. So
he.
like, he gets shot in the leg, and then he runs away, but nothing ever
Yeah.
comes from that. And there's this whole thing of him being like, "Oh, like that's kind of like a miss." There's a few things which I'm like, they're missed opportunities. Like, there's another bit where like he's talking to someone, and he's like, "Oh yeah, half these people at these fascist meetings you're going to are like journalists or like, government agents." And I think if you spent more time at these meetings, then that could be really interesting. Like, quite um you could get quite a good sense of paranoia from him being like, "I don't know who I can talk to here."
Right. Yeah, I think that would have been very interesting to see that play out. Um, and I think that is where we kind of fall into the direction
Yes.
of the movie. I do think the plot and the direction at that is kind of scatterbrained a little bit,
Yeah.
and it goes a lot of ways. But considering it has a pretty tight runtime of
Yeah, it's that 100 minutes.
um it doesn't really it efficiently bring all those points to a definitive conclusion. Like there's even one part where Ryan Gosling's character forces another one of his posse to put the bomb in,
Yeah.
and the guy is like, no, 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 I can't do it this way. You need to give me more time. And Ryan Gosling's character is like, no, just do it. Usually, when you hear that in movies, it's never a good sign. Something always goes wrong. That's like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
But it doesn't go wrong, which I thought just having that and keeping that was interesting because he didn't need to.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I feel like, I'm sure if you ask the director, he'd be like, "Oh, the reason this film is so scattered is because it kind of because I think the film being scattered kind of gives you a good sense of what this character is like. And I think in that way, it being
That's very
scattered
true.
works because your brain is kind of like it's kind of tricky to follow and figure out what's going on and that sort of thing. And in that respect, it works, but I don't think that really excuses the lack of clarity, you know?
Hmm. I agree.
Yeah. But it's like the I think the direction is interesting. Like he went for something, I would say. And
He
whether
did
that
go for
works,
something.
yeah, something different.
Um, I do think one thing. Um, like I said, we've addressed this multiple times. The budget of this film
Yeah.
low,
Yeah.
and I think with things like the camera, it is very jarring going from Remember the Titans, which is this huge multi-million-dollar production with Denzel Washington. Disney is financing it. You know, like it's a
Yeah.
huge movie. Going straight into this super, super
That's got 20 times the
indie.
budget. Yeah.
Yeah. It's it is jarring. Like the camera quality in and of itself looks like it.
And like there were some cuts that were difficult to follow. Like it's the same bit earlier on where he's like the guy pulls up and he's like, "Hey, do you want to go kill a Jew?" And he goes, "Yeah, okay." And then it immediately cuts to him with a sniper rifle up on a hill somewhere. And like
Yeah.
sometimes those shots I would be a bit like it would be quite jarring. And I like yeah, I feel like it's a choice. Not only is it a budget constraint, but it's also a choice, and it's I don't think the choice worked amazingly.
No. And you know what though? This movie does. I do think they were very aware of the budget and then tried to adjust the film accordingly to then use those budget constraints instead as motivation for creativity, which is usually
Yeah,
you know, you see that that's
and I
not
think it is a pretty
uncalled
good
for.
film for the
It
budget
is.
it's made with. When you think like there's guns, there's quite a lot of people. There's like a lot of it's filmed in the city, that sort of thing.
Um, should we get into the wild card? Because I think we're kind of floating over there
Yeah,
already.
yeah.
Um, some weird stuff is going off across.
You're
Something's in
really
the
looking
walls.
around. What's going on in your room right now?
Nothing, but I think that like maintenance must be being done and
Okay.
they're legitimately like in the wall somewhere. So I just hear like scraping along the walls, like chairs moving or something.
Well, you'll be happy to know I can't hear any of it.
Well, that's great. Now I just sound insane. Um, but so our wild card today, there isn't it's movie is just it's a drama.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So we chose cinematography thoughts
Hmm.
because if I think of the most visually striking Ryan Gosling movies. It might be Blade Runner or Drive. But this movie, I would argue, is not as visually striking, but the cinematography, I think, does play a large role.
It's interesting. They do once again, like it's funny to say this, but after watching something like Remember the Titans or The Fall Guy, where it is very conventional and most of the time the cinematography is used to just show you one character is standing here and one character is standing here and they're having a conversation. Like that's a lot of it. I think here there's a lot more deliberate choices in making things look a bit unorthodox or that sort of thing, which I think works.
Yeah. Um, so when my roommate came in, my roommate is a cinematography major
Yes.
at the school I go to. And so I was interested in what he thought of the way the movie looked. And I was like, Devin, what year do you think this movie was made? And he said 95, 94.
Not an
And I
awful
said,
guess.
no, 2001. And he was very surprised by that.
Yeah.
And I do not think that the quality of a camera that you use in a movie dictates the quality of the cinematography because it doesn't at all. And there are some shots in this movie that I think work very well. And I think with the opening of this film,
Really
where
good.
we follow Ryan Gosling stalking this Jewish man
Yeah.
through subway system, I thought that was very effective, and it kind of gave us was a good introduction to Ryan Gosling's character.
Yeah.
But I do think I don't- could the budget forces unique perspectives and shots to be used in this film, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't.
Yeah. I imagine the camera quality is worse because they need something small to shoot around the city.
That's also true.
Like
Yeah.
that would be my assumption. And like I don't it's not a major issue. I mean, I
No
wasn't on the biggest
major
screen,
issue.
so maybe I was less um, you know, aware of it. What do you think your favorite scene of this film is?
Favorite scene of this film. I think the scene between him and the reporter for the first time are really interesting.
Same. Same. So what happens is he sits this journalist phones him up and he's like, hey, I was at that meeting. Am I able to talk to you? And then he sits down and he's like, so why don't you like Jewish people? And he goes on this whole massive thing about how they love oral sex and oral sex is perverted. And like for it's an interesting scene because this is like one of the first scenes where he really talks. And
Hmm.
for a minute, you're like, this guy's just an idiot. And then you're like, oh no, he talks very eloquently and very clearly. Maybe like he seems to think he knows what he's talking about. And like
Right.
there's an interesting balance there. And the scene ends with the journalist confronting him and being like, oh, so how come you hate Jewish people if you're Jewish? And this is like when we as an audience find this out as well. And like he brings a gun out and like threatens him with the gun. He's like, hey, if you print this story, I'm going to kill myself. And I think it's maybe the most emotion, some of the most emotion you get from the Gosling in this film.
Yeah,
And I do think it's a really, really solid scene.
it was a solid scene.
I do think this is a good film. I didn't I mean enjoy is probably the wrong word. I appreciated it.
So this is looking to be a pretty quick episode from
Yes,
us, but I do think should
it's
we
a short
rate the
film.
film out of 10?
I
Because I'm
think
very interested to hear what you give it.
I think I'm going to give it a 7.5.
I think I give it a 6 out of 10.
Really,
Yeah.
I was between a 7 and a 7.5. And I gave Remember the Titans a 7.5. I'll give it a 7 because just because I think Remember the Titans does have that edge.
I do this could very well potentially be um the film we disagree on the most. And I don't think we disagree with each other,
No,
but we are very like-minded in the films we watch and
yeah, we
appreciate.
usually are. We'll see. There's probably I bet there'll be another one.
Maybe. Do you know which do you have an
I'm like we might have vastly different views on the Notebook. It's not a film I've watched, so
Oh, I've watched Notebook.
on what do you think?
I like it.
See, I feel like I might just be 100% in on the Notebook. It wouldn't surprise me.
Okay. All
Seems
right.
like my kind of film. My kind of film. Other than that, I don't like honestly. When I look at the list of Ryan Gosling films, I'm like aware of about half of them. You
I
know.
think I've seen a good chunk. But anyways, rate the
Anyway,
Goss out of
sorry.
10.
I think it's got to be high.
I think it's
So
gonna be high.
just to remind us, we gave an 8.5 for The Fall Guy and a 5 for Remember the Titans.
I think I'm gonna give him an 8.
I was going to say 8 as well. I think it's not quite as like well rounded as The Fall Guy, and obviously completely different things he's going for. Like
Yes.
these two performances could not be any more different.
Um, but with that said, the character he goes for, he does very adequately.
Yeah, and I don't.
I do think we
God.
haven't mentioned there is a lot of controversy that goes is very common in Hollywood for Jewish characters to be played by non-Jewish actors.
Yeah.
And there's like a great example would be Oscar Isaac,
Hmm.
cast in Moon Knight, non-Jewish actor who's playing a Jewish character. Um, and there's a lot of people who are upset by that, the internet, and I think they're pretty justified.
Yeah.
Feel that way. However, especially I do think not that I wouldn't go as far as say Ryan Gosling was miscast in this movie, but it was he was saying we're in
Yeah.
Oscar for Oscar Isaac. Yes,
Do you know what my
Moon
two
Knight's Jewish.
on the situation is?
What'd you say?
Do you know what my opinion on the situation is?
Hmm.
So I think it's different with something like Moon Knight, where to begin with, there's a difference because the team behind the Believers, at least the director, who was also the writer, was Jewish, and obviously he had some say. So clearly he was okay with it, and he would know
Hmm.
more about this sort of thing than I would. And I
And
would say,
me as well.
yeah, and I would say the other issue for me is something like Moon Knight has less of a Jewish team working behind it, and they hired Oscar Isaac for that film. Yes, because he's a good actor, but also because they were like, oh, people are going to watch this because Oscar Isaac is a popular actor, and there might not be if we hired a Jewish actor, there'd probably be less popular and less people would watch the show. And like, I feel like when that's the reason why you're not choosing someone of the original race to play it, that's when it's a bit like, oh, should you be doing that? But that wouldn't have been why Ryan Gosling was cast in this because at the time, no one knew him.
No, and you know what? I never even really thought about it that way, and I think that's a very um justifiable point of view. The only thing when I was watching this and Ryan Gosling's character was
Yeah.
spouting off all this anti-Semitism verbiage. I was like, good, because if we should, I
Yeah, I
because
get
he's
why.
not a Jewish.
If there wasn't a Jewish writer and director, I think I would feel a bit uncomfortable about it.
Okay,
But the fact that
yeah, that's fair enough.
and
But
the fact that he was there behind the camera, I'm kind of like, you know, and I'm, and yeah, it's not like I think the other difference is that this film isn't going. Yes, these opinions that Ryan Gosling's character is saying is all right. Obviously, the film is saying the opposite of that.
so we both gave Ryan Gosling an 8.
Yeah, Ryan Gosling gets an 8, and I'm not. I think the literally me section gets a big fat no.
Yes. That may have been the easiest question we will ever have to answer in this podcast.
I think he does play some dodgy characters, but that one was nice and quick.
Yeah, easy peasy.
Um, so next week we are talking about the slaughter rule. I have heard zero about this film.
What's it called again?
The
Say it more
slaughter,
American.
the slaughter rule.
The slaughter rule.
Yeah, so the slaughter rule.
All
Um,
right.
it stars nobody that I know other than Amy Adams is in it.
It has a okay, not a bad score.
Not a
Rotten
bad.
Tomatoes.
The Roy gets cut from his high school football team just days after his estranged father dies. For him, football is more than a proving ground. Is
Right.
this another American football film?
Oh yeah, we like him here. We like him over here.
Last week I hadn't watched a single American football film. Soon I'm going to be on two.
Wow.
Anyway,
Congratulations.
so before next week, if you want to join in and watch that film with us, feel free and we'll be talking about it next week. If not, you can still listen to the episode, you don't need to watch the film. Maybe us explaining the film will be a much better experience than the film. Who knows? I haven't seen it.
That's very true. Look at you.
But thank you for listening. Uh, I think, yeah, I was trying to think if there's anything else to say. Adios. Um,
Bye, guys. Thanks for listening.
see you next week. Bye.